Welcome, welcome back to another episode of the Lightdrop podcast, where it's just two homies talking creativity and beyond. And today, yet again, I love it. We're three friends.
Yeah.
Um, Three friends. Our relationship with our guest today, like so many other relationships of the modern era, was born on social media. So Jeff and I are very excited to learn more about this artist today. My first impressions, he's got the vibes, very intelligent, very mindful person. Over 15 years experience in VFX and animation across many different time zones, right? And
Yeah.
mediums, film, television, advertising, music videos. Today, we are joined by senior compositor and on-set VFX soup, Taylor Armstrong. Taylor, thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Uh, Very much looking forward to chatting, and I love our online chatting, and really glad that we're able to meet and do this because I love watching the podcast, and I use the Lightwork platform. A little plug, and yeah, it's just great. Great. Can't wait to get to know you guys more.
Yeah.
And just have an excuse to hang out.
Nah, appreciate having you here, Taylor. I'm just gonna just jump in and just get to know you because I know Jamil has talked to you a little bit, but we just want to know, what have you been up to? What have you been doing creatively? I see in your bio there it says creative human. Tell us about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mean like lately?
Yeah, just
I
lately,
guess
like
lately,
it's been.
man. I'm gonna start just by saying I've been super fortunate with. I was at Alchemy X doing compositing work, and then when the strikes hit, like the day the actors went on strike, they let me go, and I had like a month and a half of like total dry spell. But then, like fortunately, since October up until like 3 weeks ago, I've been like super busy, and so as I'm sure we'll probably organically get into, my journey's been vast and across the world, basically, and different met folks from different walks of life, and that like all kind of just came back to me in the dry spell because I was doing automotive work, comping work for a company based out of London remotely on spots for like Honda and Lexus, and then I was doing some like digital paint After Effects cleanup work on a puppet project based out of New Orleans, and then I was doing luckily in Atlanta. They were still shooting some stuff, especially I was on a episodic series that had gotten like a SAG interim agreement. So even though SAG was still on strike, um, they had already like greenlit this project to shoot under the terms that SAG was like on strike for. So since they agreed to comply with that, we got to shoot the show. So I was on set soup for that, and then two more features on set souping, and then picked up some comp work out of LA remotely, and doing revisions to a Bible for a new animated series I've been working on, and that's based out of New York. And
All
gosh,
over.
I
yeah,
know.
just all over. And like, I knew it was so sparse, and I was like so lucky to get those calls, so I was just taking it all, So it was super busy, when it rains, it pours, and now it's all kind of drying up right now. I got a lot of bids and things in the water and stuff cooking, but yeah, just like late nights, weekends, and trying to like be grateful for it too, because usually it's like, damn, get burnt out and crunch time. But I was like, I know how lucky I am, and there was a
Yeah.
bunch of other stuff. A bunch of other stuff came my way too that I couldn't take on, that I did pass off to friends, which was probably like the best feeling to be like, I'm actually swamped, thank God, uh, but I've got like everybody I know needs work, so look at this person, this person, this person, and I think I at least got like three people gigs over that span, which
Nice.
felt really good.
Nice.
It's the best.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, uh, yeah, dude. That was honestly the last what's it been like 10 months now, almost 10,
Hmm.
11 months, at least for me, like as far as um like feeling the effects of the strikes. Uh Kind of the like inverse. I was super, super slow, like all tail end of the summer, and into the fall last year. And then most of the winter time. It wasn't until recently that I started to get some like coordinators and stuff reaching out to me about projects, and finally got a booking that I just wrapped up, but that was like about a month long, which was nice. I was telling Jeff, like, on that booking, it had been 9 months since I'd worked on something,
Yeah.
and like the
Wow.
first day I was in dailies, it was like it literally felt like the first time I was in dailies, where I was
Hmm.
just kind of like I had a moment like, yo, I'm here. Like I'm
Yeah.
back. you know, and it was nice. It really felt like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like it was challenging having that dry spell, but I've been saying all along that I really do feel like for many of us it will like prove to be one of the best things that that really could have happened, to really just like, I mean, I was getting stagnant. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. As far as just like really, really appreciating the work that I was doing, and then where I was doing it, the projects I was working on. So yeah, after having that like 9 month spell and then being back in dailies like that, it was like it's like this is nice. I was like, this is cool, man. Working with people on these jobs, like it's like you said, I really felt like fortunate, and it was a good feeling.
Hmm. What about you, Jeff? Have you been busy or?
Yeah, so I work for a nonprofit here in Atlanta, called Care. So obviously our um, weren't affected by the strike or anything in the creative industry as much because in my job, our creative department is just part of the bigger nonprofit world. So yeah, I've just been working there as a graphic designer for about 2 years now. Um,
Sweet.
yeah. So, but the thing is, since there's obviously a lot of crises that are constantly going on, um, it fluctuates between being busy, but there's always things to do. But besides that, creatively, been working on light work, been trying to practice my 3D a little bit more. I don't mess with anything like Blender, even though I
Hmm.
kind of want to, because I've been seeing a lot of just, it seems like that's where
We're the cool kids to
all
you.
the cool kids are. I'm like, everyone seems like they're having fun there. Um, I or- Originally I studied industrial design, so I was super into it. But like now that I've been learning about these other programs, Blender seems like it's fun, so I want to try that. But I've been playing around with Spline,
Mm.
trying to keep myself a little bit, you know, creatively busy besides just doing static like graphic design stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know,
Either I saw recently, um just kind of like briefly, that you posted that you did like it was like a drawing like course or something like
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
did. Tell me about that, because from what I saw, that looked really cool.
cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, actually, right now I'm in the common area of my apartment complex building, and they do. They're really cool here, and they offer like monthly special events. Like they've got like they call it the legacy lunch for like all the old timers to come, and they like cater lunch for them. And there's like a book club, and for Earth Day they like had a bunch of plants so you could like make a potted plant and bring it home. And so at one of them, it just came up that I do art, and they were like, "Oh, would you ever teach a drawing class?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so last Thanksgiving, I did one where like we did like a cartoon turkey and did like a whole like landscape scene, and just and it was like an hour long, and it's all ages, so I wasn't sure like who's going to show up and content
Yeah.
wise what we should do. So I just kind of kept it simple in the line drawing, but then for some like the older kids and the adults, brought them into like, okay, like here we can color it, you can fill it in with markers, or we can do like hatching, and then this is cross hatching, and then here's like how it looks if you outline it with a color marker instead, and um, just a lot of the stuff that it's like now it's just part of my like fiber, but like when I realize, most people who like barely draw or haven't taken any sort of lesson, it's like stuff they've never even thought about. So then they came to me to do another one like last week, and it was tricky because it was like the end of April, so like Easter was super early, so I was like, wasn't sure if it was like an Easter bunny theme, and we're like not quite in the it's like summertime, and so I even put up a poll on LinkedIn trying to figure out what to draw, and I'd settled on still
Yeah,
doing, I wanted to like still do bunnies, but I was like maybe this one I'll do like teaching kind of perspective and showing like I was going to draw a big bunny and a little bunny, and then I was going to draw like a horizon line and be like, oh, like so this was a big bunny and a little bunny, but now it's like a foreground bunny and a background bunny, and showing how we can like populate a space, and then what happens if you like just draw like a line that becomes a path and just kind of like build out a world. But
Mhm.
I could not for the life of me come up with a bunny I liked, and I was like, I was like so stressed about it, and it was supposed to be like easy. And so
Mhm.
my wife was like, why don't you just like draw faces? Because I was like doodling, and that's like just usually what I'll do is just draw like goofy expressions, and she's like, that's what you do, like that comes so easy, like just do that. And in my head, I thought I had to make it something more, and I was like, okay, yeah, we'll just do that. So we ended up riffing for like an hour and a half on just like again the stuff I kind of take for granted, of like eyes, different types of eyes. What if they're
Mhm.
far apart? What if they're close? What if they're high on the forehead? What if they're low in the forehead? And then like taking folks through the ride of like finding a drawing as you go, kind of like this podcast, instead of having like, okay, I'm going to draw this character. Like, what if you just sit down, you're like doodling, on the phone with like health insurance, and you draw an oval, and then you're like, okay, oh, like, what happens if I draw the nose here? And then that informs the next decision. And then what does that feel like? Oh, okay, well, it looks like he's angry. Okay, well, what if we lean into that and give him angry eyebrows? And then how would his back look, right? And then just building out organically this like character. Um, and they seem to really dig that. So that was really cool. And looking forward to doing it again. Not sure what I'll do next time, but I think we might do like just like a street and just do like buildings and just kind of more like take it the other way and go a little more rigid and teach perspective. Um, but yeah, it's really fun, and it's free, and I'm just doing it to like be part of the community. But with this world we're in now, super remote, which I love for the most part as far as like work life balance. Um, just getting out and like spending an afternoon drawing with like your
yeah,
neighbors has been like just like so good for like the spirit to be like, drawing's cool. I love art.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's why I do this.
I was gonna add I went to a sidewalk arts festival. Let's see, like last weekend, and it was the first time I'd drawn anything like large or even big because most of the time I'm working on sketches, my little book. But this was part of like the SCAD Sidewalks Festival, and I was drawing next to this guy, and everybody's walking past us, and people were taking pictures, obviously. But the feeling of being next to somebody else and drawing something that large, it was definitely it was it felt like a community that I hadn't tapped into for a while. Now that I've been working in corporate so much, so I
Hmm.
definitely understand that feeling of like getting out and drawing in front of people because people really get excited to see it.
Hmm.
See the process of it more than I remember sometimes.
It's like
Yeah.
the end result. The end result always looks simple. Like it just looks like you just look at it and you're like, that's good. And then you sit down and try and do it yourself, and you're like, man, I can barely draw like a stick figure kind of thing. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize that. What's your drawing background, Taylor? Like,
that's
like
interesting.
just kind of self-taught, or did you ever do it like professionally or at all?
Yeah. So I grew my whole. I mean, I grew. Of course, I grew. I grew from a baby to a man. Um, I drew my entire life, and then I went to SVA for traditional animation. So
Mm,
I studied pencil and paper animation, and prior to that, I'd done a year as a graphic design major elsewhere at UMass, and so lots of figure drawing. You know, I thought I was going to be just like a cartoon animator, so it was just like boom, drawing every day. I was in New York, so every day on the subway, just drawing. Everyone on the subway, and graduated, realized there weren't that many job opportunities to do that specifically. But I've always loved it, and any opportunity I get to do it, I love it because I usually kind of forget how much I enjoy it, and then even like now when I'm mainly doing like VFX stuff, um, just to be able to like just quickly kick out like this rough like thumbnail storyboard of a sequence or all the different ways we could do it. I feel like it just also helps like for the visual language, instead of sometimes it's so much quicker to do that than like typing up, a paragraph of notes, and you can just be like,
yeah,
oh,
Mhm.
put it this way.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
yeah. I can't draw. I I like
You can
and I've
draw. What do you
tried,
mean,
and I have like a lot of people in my family who can. So like
bro?
you
I've seen
know,
your drawings. You can draw.
my I drew a fire truck like I think in like one of my foundations classes at like art school that I think it turned out all right. But like outside of that, but not only that though, it's like I I actually I don't want to say I don't enjoy drawing, but there was always something about it to me that was like um just wasn't my thing, like from the standpoint of I think it was like the physical process really like I don't know,
Mm,
I don't really know how to describe it. It was just it always felt like I would rather use my hands
yeah.
differently. I really don't know how to explain it, but it was
Did you ever
like
did you get into sculpting at all much with like clay or even Play-Doh or as a kid
yeah,
or like
yeah, as a kid I definitely did more of that like just playing in the dirt like molding stuff like I would as a kid, I used to make like these cardboard figures all the time. Like I would get like a giant piece of cardboard and I just cut it into like pieces and like tape the pieces together to like make
yeah,
actual like stick figure.
yeah, that's
Um
cool.
that was much more of like my thing as and it was like it wasn't until I kind of got into like art school and I was trying to I was trying to figure out oh maybe I do want to do some animation and then I was like let me take some drawing classes. And then it was like, "No, this isn't really my thing."
Yeah.
I'd rather be
Yeah.
hands-on in a different way. Um, but yeah, I mean, Sidewalk Arts Festival, like doing things like that. I feel like, and I
Hmm.
want to get your guys' opinion on this. I feel like the last several years, it's been this like series of circumstances with COVID leading to remote work, leading to people working remotely on their art projects in their own homes, um, leading to like strikes in our industry, to being without work but still in your own homes, interacting with people differently. I feel like all these things in the last several years have really kind of like uh, created this perfect like internal storm. I think within a lot of people to really feel this need to like get back to that simple stuff, to like really kind of ask themselves like what did I get into this for, where I feel like prior to COVID, many of us were kind of on autopilot about this stuff. What do you guys think? Have you guys felt that?
Yeah. Um, I mean, as far as like the changes that's gonna happen with artists because of these
Yeah,
situations,
it's like a I don't know. I've just had this feeling that like I've had this feeling that a lot of people share this same feeling
yeah,
that
they want to
just
go.
things are shaking up
Yeah.
um in in at work and how we approach work, how we are at work. um, and it's just got people kind of analyzing things a little bit differently, especially in creative industries with artists and stuff. Um, don't really know how to verbalize it, but I just feel like there's a shift that's kind of happening amongst artists.
Yeah. No, I
I
definitely.
think
I mean, I agree with that for sure. Sorry, go ahead, Taylor.
it's all good. I think I think it's even larger than just artists. I think the whole world, like what's tricky about all of it, the strikes, COVID, and everything in between, is like there was never an end in sight. So like people, it was supposed to be 2 weeks, right? The lockdown. I remember I was still at work at Encore. I remember the day they got rid of our ceramic plates and they brought in the paper and plastic plates, and but we were all still touching the same plastic plates. I was like, whatever. But like as the information came in, as like the kind of jurisdiction shifted, we were kind of like making incremental shifts, like never really like knowing how long it's going to last or thinking critically about it, or just like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now, or okay, it's just for 2 weeks, and then we go home, and then the studio's set up kind of like, you know, okay, remote setups, but we're going to be back in the office, so don't worry about it. And then like a month goes by, and 2 months goes by, and 3 months, and now it's like a year, and the studios have to close. There's bankruptcies, there's furloughs, and sorry, I'm in the communal area, so um, the but like so people are just kind of constantly adapting, but not fully adapting because we've still got one foot in the water, and then that kind of finally ends, and then people's lives have been kind of turned upside down because we're also like never with enough foresight to be like, okay, so the last 8 months, I'm gonna move back in with my parents, save some money, save what I got now. Instead, it was like a slow drip, right? Everyone's kind of so like now we like wake up, like where the hell did 2 years go? And then like okay, we get back on the track, and then in the entertainment industry, it's like and the strikes, and you're like okay, well, like leading up to
Yeah,
the strikes, you're like okay,
Lord.
well hopefully hopefully these people will come to an agreement, right? There's some disagreements, hopefully they'll come to an agreement. This isn't going to happen, and then it does. It's like okay, well hopefully they'll get it sorted in a month or two. Then we can get back to work by the end of 2023, right? And now here we are. It's like survive till 25, and you're like, it's like everyone's kind of been going with the flow, not really sure what to trust. No one's trusting information. No one's trusting each other. Everyone's vying for the same spots, and so I think people just it's like the worst thing for the humans, right? Like we need direction, we need community, we need belonging, we need reason. Like we're like like pattern seeking creatures, So like 4 or 5 years of like meandering through time and space was like the worst thing, and now like it's like yeah, what like why am I doing what am I doing? And wait a second, like we haven't worked in 11 months, and do I I got hit up to do this animation Bible like for like a pitch for a TV show, and my wife had never seen me draw because I'm so busy with like the industry stuff. She's like, so I agreed to it. I'm like, hey, I'm doing this pitch Bible. She's like, can you even draw? I was like, of course I can. She's like, I've never seen you draw. I was like, I guess you're right. I was like, I think I can draw. Oh, I guess we'll figure it out. And luckily I could, but it's like just everything got so rattled. Like all of our patterns changed, and all of our everything changed. So um, I think even now it's like so the strikes ended, and now we're still waiting for stuff to come back. Because then what's going on with like the IATSE negotiations this summer, and do we stay in the industry? Do we move? And then there's also the whole thing of like, well, I've waited 5 years, I can't jump ship now, right? Because then people are like, right? So you've got people that are jumping ship first and maybe finding stuff, and then there's like the people holding on to the Titanic as it sinks, and they're like, maybe the ship's gonna float again, And then it's a lot, right? Like, what's the right thing to do, And I think it's
yeah,
different for everybody, It's crazy. And then it's like, how do you be creative on top of that? How do you be passionate when you don't know where you're going to live next month? It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It's like it's like you said, it's like a perfect storm of these these constant kind of like uncertainties that have led people to be um to feel like they can never like commit to something. And And I feel like that's, like you said, that's impacted like creativity. Um, especially from the standpoint of like doing things the way they've been done. I think that's kind of like what it sums up to is like everybody's like, oh, let's like 2 weeks into COVID, it's like, oh, we'll get back to normal. 4 weeks into COVID, we'll get back to normal. And now it's like we're like no one really even knows. People are kind of just seeing, okay, we said this already, we said this already, we said this already. What like where can I where can I go to actually find some answers to anything, right? Um and people are asking themselves they're having conversations with themselves about their work and what they want to do next in their career and all these things that they're faced with. It's just been this constant like uncertainty and um I think when you like tack on the business side of things, it starts to feel I feel like a lot of people feel like they don't fit, within that system of the monetization and just like the big picture of things. Um I don't know. It's been like a weird it's like I said, I can't really put my finger on it, but it's just been this kind of like feeling that I've had personally over the last several years. That really the strikes and seeing a lot of other people struggle over the last several months has kind of made me like take a step back. Like, man, it's like it's not just me. It's a lot of people everywhere that are just really feeling shaken up right now in their own lives.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
I was gonna that. I mean, I think we've. I was thinking about it, how it affected my industry slightly. I mean, obviously, the nonprofit world is a little bit different, but it kind of reminded me of the Google um, layoffs that have been happening with people. I think that's what I've been seeing from at least a lot of my friends is you said, Jamil, is yeah, like people are losing faith in these large organizations. And I think when I see people, my friends on LinkedIn who are either like starting off because I'm more of a junior, um, they don't have as much faith in, those big jobs that they were going to get. So it's kind of this weird, should I keep doing what I want to keep doing, what I've spent the last 4 years trying to learn about, especially in the art industry, because people think like, okay, I'm going to go to Google, I'm not going to get laid off, like nothing's going to happen to me, or COVID is starting to slow down a little bit. I can apply for those jobs. Because I used to think that I was like, eventually I'll work for Google or Amazon, but I don't know anymore. like,
Taylor, how are you like you're 15 years, right? 15 plus years in
Yeah,
this
yeah.
industry. Like, would you how do you kind of see yourself in the like fitting in the range of talent, if that makes sense? Like for example, I feel like I've been in the industry for around almost 9 years, and I've said that I feel like I'm like a middle child. Like there's plenty of like older brothers and sisters in the industry who've been around 15, 20, 25 years, and then there's also just as many juniors and students that kind of look to me as like this senior kind of voice. So like how do you feel like you're like where does your voice kind of sit as far as kind of like not only encouraging your peers in your circle and your experience level, but also like trying to kind of see some of the patterns that have been happening based on what we just talked about, and like trying to kind of set the younger kind of students, junior artists, sharing wisdom with them to be like, hey, this is what's important, this is what's not, kind of thing.
Yeah, good question. I think trying to draw like family parallels. I don't know, maybe like I think definitely like an older brother, maybe an uncle, maybe maybe a cousin, um, you know, because I've done a lot of different things in a lot of different industries, like simultaneously with film. Um, I did music professionally for 3 years, like touring, signed. Um, I've done, even in entertainment, I've written, I've directed, I've shot, I've edited, I've been talent. Uh, I've started my own film festival. I worked for Cartoon Brew. I ran another animation festival. I'm like always wearing lots of hats and just doing lots of different stuff. And I think because of that, I have, yeah, maybe I'm like the cousin that like went abroad for summer and came back. And I'm like, I just have like a different perspective, I think, than a lot of folks. Um, because I also, I started pencil and paper animation, came in through stereo conversion. So roto and paint for 3 years straight. Um, got into motion graphics, compositing, like real compositing, not stereo, which is whatever. Stereo conversion is really hard work, and a lot of people look down on it. And the people that look down on it have their own issues to deal with, but it's very valid work and it's very difficult. And a lot of great artists have come from that because it's very demanding. Um, get off the soapbox, but like I've been an extra outside in Chicago in like 20-degree weather, and I've been like a roadie and helped like load in big bands on tour, and I've kind of done all the grunt work and in all the different aspects. So like now when I'm on set, like I have empathy for everybody on set because I know what they all do, and I know how hard they're all working, and I know that the crafty person has been there. I have a call time at 7, but like the tent's already set up and they've already made food, so they've been there since 5. So when did they have to leave their house? And I'm like aware of all that. Whereas like some people might just show up and be like, "Oh, my coffee sucks," And so I try to bring that vibe with me everywhere. Um, even just like comping on a show. We'll get like outsourced roto that kind of sucks, and then it's like there's people who would just be upset about it. I like to always be like a problem solver in the room. And so even then take that to like just like conversations, discourse, stuff on LinkedIn, just trying to be like, there's just so many things going on. Even pitching a show now, I've pitched to Disney, Nickelodeon, and Netflix, and Apple. And like now that I've been in that room and know what it takes to get to that room, it changes the way I think about things. The same way once I started running a film festival, it changed the way how I thought about it when I was on the other side. And I was like, why can't I get, why can't they tell me why they didn't select me or why didn't my film, and all of that feeling. Once you wear the other shoe, you're like, oh, I get it. There's a lot going on here. And even if every film's amazing, there's only 2 hours of, theater time. So someone has to get cut. And so long-winded way of saying, I think, um, just trying to be like, some sort of like guiding figure. I really want to just be helpful, and like without like ego about it, but like listen, like there's a lot going on that maybe you just don't understand, and here's why that
Yeah.
person might not be writing you back, and here's maybe why blah 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 blah. And yeah, while it's on my head, like the one thing I would encourage is like continuing to try and continuing to try different things because like I have peers that like are like just compositors, right? Like I'm just a compositor. That's I need to. And it's like, well, it might not happen anymore, or like there might just be less opportunities, and it doesn't mean you're any less qualified. But like if you want to stay busy, like you'll have to do something else. Like when taxi drivers stopped driving taxis, maybe they just started driving Ubers instead. Maybe when everybody that owned a Blockbuster went out of business, like they had to do something else, and maybe it was still in retail, and maybe they still, but like you have to be like malleable, or else you struggle more. So,
Yeah, I was
then,
gonna I was gonna say I love how you basically you talked about going from starting at at the bottom, building your way up, and being humble about how you've been kind of going about it. And I can kind of see like this pattern of like, you'll start off something, because when you were saying all the things that you were doing, I was like, man, how's this guy doing all this stuff? But it seems like you have a universal mindset for every approach. And I think it seems like it's helped, because I was going to ask, like, how did you go in from music to being an extra to going into
FA
VFX
was
animation? I was like, this guy's done every single thing. I'm like, are you a chef as well? But just in case.
I wanted to be as a kid, but I'm glad I didn't do that because I'm too slow in the kitchen. I do love cooking, but I'm like
Yeah,
very slow and meticulous. But
I wouldn't be surprised if you started doing it next year. But um, no, definitely appreciate that you shared that you have you're a creative human because of the way that you approach your problems from the ground up. So no, I appreciate that.
yeah, you don't really attach, you don't really. I think like titles can be, especially in our industry, compositors, animators, you know, rigging artists, right? It's like it's very easy to go 2, 3 years and then just that's what I am.
mhm.
Um, and so I want to ask you for sure, like, what is that something you deliberately kind of set out to like touch a little bit of everything, or did you just kind of like was your path just kind of this winding road that you just flowed with and found yourself at all these different positions?
Yeah, definitely more the flow of just always chasing what I was drawn to and what I've loved, and then whenever like there's even like an opening, I even see the door. If the door isn't open for like that path, I'm like, oh, let's just try it, right? And so like this morning, I was actually thinking about talking, and I had totally forgotten because I never talk about this part, but like this whole art path was like the plan B because I actually went to school to do music professionally, and I wanted to be a sound recording like music producer, and I got into college for that. But then there was like a music exam. Like, so I got admitted to UMass, and then they're like, okay, well, you have to like show us you can do music shit. And so I did a performance exam, which I passed, but I'm totally self-taught. And part two of the exam was like you had to do sight reading and read sheet music and play like in real time. And so they put it on my music stand, and I was like, if this is it, like, I was like, never mind. Like, like I couldn't do it. And then so I was like still admitted in the university, but I had to change my major, so I shifted to graphic design because I'd always liked art stuff. But then I really fell in love with it, and then I was like, well, if I'm gonna go to art school, I should go to like an art school. So then a friend of mine had heard of SVA just like somehow, and so that was the only school I applied to, and I got in, and and then I picked animation because I'd always loved doing animation. So like everything just kind of like so that I've gotten in, and then I was like loving it, and as I poured my heart into it, and then that led to like internships, which like led to jobs, which then then I would like meet people and blah 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 blah. Next thing you know, like I was doing that, but also now that I'm in New York, I always loved pro wrestling. So
Oh,
I found a wrestling school that was run by a WWE Hall of Famer named Johnny Rods, and it was like a 40-minute train ride from school. So I started doing that on the weekends. And then I love music, so I've always played music. So then I was also in a band. And so I'm like doing school, working on films, training to wrestle on the weekends and like Thursday nights, and then playing shows and practicing. And then eventually, like the band was getting popular, and I had wrestling shows every Friday, and you just have to choose, right? You're on a fork, and it's like, well, uh, like we got signed. So I was like, well, I got to do this. I got to chase this because I can come back to wrestling. And so I went wrestling, I went music full time. I left SVA because I was like, I could always come back to school, and I just did music hard for like 3 years. Came back, and then SVA was like, oh, like no, like because I wanted to do it remote, and it wasn't a remote world yet, and
mhm.
and they were like, you have to like kind of, I'd have to do like a whole. I only had to do my thesis film, but they were like, oh, you have to do like a whole other year, and I was like, screw that. So then I just then I just like got back into working in animation, and then just and I get back on the path and I get back in, and then and just go with the
Yeah.
flow,
Be
and
like water. What is what
Yeah, I
what
love that.
be
yeah,
like water?
It's like
Just,
it's like
yeah,
it's almost like you never viewed anything as a no. It's like you always framed your situation as just like I could either say yes to this or I could say yes to this, right? It's like
yeah,
what do I where I want to go. It's yeah, I love that. It's very much like kind of how I've been um conscious of like how I've been trying to go about things lately. Like I mean prime example this week, um a week and a half ago I wasn't even thinking about a dog. And today I
oh
have
man,
a dog in my living room.
sweet.
And it's been this such a like long story, but it's very much been like I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I'm a dog person. I'm like, but it just seems like things are happening outside of my control. I couldn't either like be really just like no, 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 no to this, or I can just kind of say like, how do I want to be? How do I want to be? Okay, let's see, let's see.
yeah,
Um, and for no other reason, honestly, just then and it just feels better to be that way, right? Like even if it doesn't work out, it just feels better to have gone through that process, just being like okay, rather than just resisting like everything, pushing back. Um, yeah, I think that that's definitely like, dude, wrestling, music, like going through like just I love that. I wish that like I wish that more people you know can really hear that, right, and just
Hmm.
be like,
yeah,
there's this is just a journey, man, and it sounds like you loved every kind of like aspect of it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I do, there's times I miss all of it, but for the most part, like, I get to look back and be like, yeah, I did that, and like, and then when you do it, just like fully doing it, like, and not like, because sometimes even when people are trying to juggle too much, you're like half in on all of it, right? And then a year goes by and you're like, whoa, like, oh my God, what did I do? And you don't even like feel the experiences. So, yeah, it's hard to, I'm trying to like distill it into like a sound bite, but it's like, it's really, like you can, I know, like making a living out of any of it is a separate discussion. But as far as like the things you do, I feel like people can get so set on their own self like restricted paths, right? Even whether it's like from their parents or themselves, or I'm gonna go to art school, I'm gonna become like the best CG artist, and I'm gonna go work at Google, and I'm never gonna get laid off. And then like when any of those things go south, you're like, what the fuck do I do? Right? Like I just put
Yeah.
all my eggs in this basket. And sometimes like that shock alone is enough to fry you. Whereas if you're like, I like CG art, I'm gonna go study that, right? And then in that, you like get hired by Google. You're like, great, I've always wanted to work here. And then you get laid off. You're like, well, damn, like, you know, that was an experience, but like now I have Google on my resume. I can go anywhere, right? And then like, how do you just and it's you can't really fake it. Like you kind of have to live that of like okay, like I love the adventure because stuff always goes south, right? So like enjoy the ride while you have it. Like you know, I got to play music full time in like
What
around
instrument?
guitar, and the and I didn't like we didn't like we did pretty dang well. But, like we're in like
are you
probably like the
famous?
top.
Are you
No,
famous?
I mean not famous. I mean I don't know. You guys are interviewing me, so maybe I am. Um, but
Just had
like
to
no, we
check.
did. You know, we
Yeah,
did. We played some cool shows. We played live on MTV. Got to do some really cool stuff. But like didn't break through like the top tier, but still
yeah,
made it further than most people do. And I can look back at that and be like, yeah, like cool. That's what I always wanted to do as a kid, and I did it. And like now, what else can I do, right? And some
Yeah.
people will get stuck in it and like live in that, like, oh, the glory days, man. I wish I could do that again, man. That was like the best day of my life. But like you're like just living in the past still. Like you gotta find joy in the next thing, or else you're just stuck.
Yeah.
I
That's
read
a
a quote recently, actually, that I really liked. Um, you may have heard it before. I'm not sure if it's like a popular one, but it's the first time I heard it. And it was like, um, when asking like, okay, if I say I want to do X, Y, Z, and it's going to take me 3 years, 2 years, to maybe like reach that goal that I have in my head. Um, and I say, okay, well, what if I work around the clock, to do it? Um, it's going to take me 6 years, right? And the logic behind that is that when you have one eye on the destination, you only have one eye left to guide you along the path. So um, it's kind of like having this knowing that I set my intention, right, to kind of be where I want to be, but and I know that I'm going to get there. I just don't know how. So it's like if you kind of approach every little detour or path that you take as being headed towards where you want to go, then it's much easier to just rest in that moment, along the whole way to really like honestly accelerate like your path, instead of like you said being half in half out on like two different things conflicting on things, and then the same amount of time passes but you didn't really commit to one or like enjoy either of them. So
good point.
Yeah, 100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
yeah, tell me, I want to hear more about the music stuff, honestly. Well,
yeah, man.
I had a my minor was music composition, uh at
Cool.
SCAD. And well, it started off as music, as sound design, because I thought that I wanted to, like, when I went to school, it was very much VFX. I was like, I want to work on Marvel movies and I want to do that whole thing. But I also love composing and stuff. But they didn't have like a music composition minor my first year. So I took a bunch of sound design classes, learning the technical stuff like Foley and all of that. And then my sophomore year was the very first year that they introduced this music composition course. So I switched my minor to that. And I was always mindful through the rest of my time at school how I much like I spent way more time and energy on those classes than I did on my like visual effects classes. And I always thought that it was kind of like not a blessing, but like I just imagine if I had gone into music professionally, that I would have almost like ruined it for myself, because it's like I still absolutely love just like composing my own stuff on the side. Um, but I've always been curious about like doing that professionally, right? It's just a whole different mindset, really, that you have to have as a musician like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think uh, even if you do something professionally that you love, you can still love it and still get out of it like loving it. Um, but yeah, like I still love music. I still, I've got like a million like voice memos of like stuff I'm writing and lyrics and stuff written. Um, don't have as much time for it these days, but still, it's great in my heart. But it did get soured for a bit, just because, similar to I think the journey we face like in visual arts, when you're like when you realize that people aren't making movies for the love of it, that studios fund movies as like investments, right? And it's a very simple thing to grasp, but people don't grasp it until they're like really deep in, and they're like, oh, what? Like the CEO of such and such doesn't love the new blah blah blah, right? And it's like, no,
Yeah.
this is a business. And
Mhm.
so, music, I did it my whole life. I was booking shows in high school and started my own little DIY label and printing shirts and doing the whole thing, and then joined this band. And we were getting some, moderate local success, and started getting scouted by record labels. And it was like, oh man, it's happening, right? And then we got signed. The name of the band is Plushgun. We were signed to Tommy Boy Entertainment, which was, they also had like, they did all the they did the House of Pain Jump Around record. They're mainly hip hop label, but like tons of huge records. And we were like their like indie electro, cute, kitschy Brooklyn hipster band that they were trying to break into that demo. But it was cool because their background's in hip hop, so like everything we did came out on vinyl, and there was remixes and super cool. But like the bigger it got, like I was doing all the design and art directing the albums and booking the shows, and then as they took more and more control, they were like restricting the shows we could play, and you know then we're also like getting paid less, which was like because like they get a cut of everything, and then it just got to the point where like after like 2 or 3 years, I was playing way less shows, making way less money, and having way less fun, and like because it was just like, no, you can't do that, or we only want you to play that show if you can headline it, and it was like, but I don't know, shouldn't we be playing shows, shouldn't we, and all these things. I'm like,
Yeah.
but they had a mission, and my love for music didn't line up with their mission, but then they also weren't like paying enough and keeping us busy. So I was like, okay, well, I think I'm gonna walk away. And so I left, and the band kept on for a bit. Um, but I was like, yeah, this is none of the reasons I started doing it for. And it's also hard to walk away from something at that point because you're like, I've been, we were pretty big like in Boston and New York and like kind of where we were all from. And so our friends would all come to the shows, and we had them on the guest list, and people would come on stage and sing with us, and it was super fun. And to like almost feel like I'm way up past it now, but in that moment, it's like you feel like you're letting all these people down that came on the ride with you, right? Like um, just all the gear, all the time, everything. Like, this is what I've always wanted, right? Like how can I walk away? And it's just like, well, just not enjoying it, man. And then leaving, then I got to go find my passion again in art and all the other stuff. Um, but it was super cool. It was a great ride. We toured Spain and Germany twice. We went to South Africa, toured the whole United States. Um, we got a song in Rock Band, the video game, so that was really cool when that happened, and got to like just do like, really cool stuff. Um, but then at the end of the day, it was like not, it wasn't really becoming a career, even though we were doing it at that level. And it was like, okay, time to let go, time to move on. And it was sad. It's like a mourning period. You're like, all right, damn.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Imagine.
but I think also doing that takes like courage to let it like to move on. Because some people, like I said, can just stay in it. Or if people are in film right now and they're miserable, it's like it's probably time to get out. I mean, obviously this is a really rough time in the industry, but like it's like there's people are going to be really upset about how the last few years have played out. And like if you can't let that upset go, then it's probably time to just move on. And um, just wanting peace for everybody. It's a lot to carry all that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was gonna say that it just reminds me of what one of our guests, Lizzie, said before about letting a part of you go so you can start the next chapter of your life. And
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it's interesting that you kind of said kind of like that mourning period of like giving yourself time to just, I guess, almost grieve over your past self. Um, I think because I think that's super important. I've never actually heard that before, but I just thought it was super interesting.
Definitely commend you for that. That was I can only I can only imagine like, you know, I mean you described it very well. And I've felt from time to time over the last year or so, I've asked this to myself, I don't want to kind of like place a broad assumption on like the entire industry, but like this was a fair question that I asked myself. when I went 9 months without work was like like did I get what I asked for? Because there were certainly times prior to that where I was working, busy, 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 where I just wasn't excited. I was working on a project that, for another ad for a product that I didn't really care about, and it was just kind of like waking up in the morning, wishing I was doing something else, like, or wishing I had time to do music or something, all these other things. So yeah, it was definitely like a question that I asked myself, like honestly, had to kind of like really like look in the mirror when I was, challenged and complaining about 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months with no work. I was like, didn't I ask, didn't I get what I wanted? Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can you be just mindful of that and just like really kind of appreciative, like find a way to be appreciative where you are, but then b, if you're not, then to like really be honest there and not just kind of like tolerate
Hmm.
tolerate it.
Yeah. It's I think that's like a lot of weight to place on yourself of like the didn't I like wish for this and the genie gave me my wish but not the way I wanted type thing. But I think I think the thing a lot of people I think what happens is like the stability was an illusion all along, right? And so
Mm,
the lack of awareness, like all this did was just serve as a wake up call to what we actually do for who, right? And so um, like we're in post production, right? So it's like already, we're like our jobs are so dependent on so many other jobs happening, and like bids being awarded, and you know the time frame. It's like we don't set the schedules, we don't do anything, we don't, right? So, and the fact to even feel like like Google letting go, like I had interviewed and turned down work at Blizzard and Weta, and I've interviewed at Sony and these big places, and um, even there you think, oh, I'm going to get in, I'll be set, but like they do layoffs, right? Projects end, and they report to shareholders who reports to like their portfolios, and the idea that like any of us are safe in any industry is still like an illusion, and like unfortunately, something I've been like lightly pumping up, shooting the horn about is like a lot of it really also needs to fall back on the universities, because like the kids that are graduating now, especially if they're like interested in the industry, but not, I don't know how much like a 20-year-old is paying attention to what's happening right now in like in the world,
yeah.
and like they're gonna graduate with like 100 grand in debt and like no industry, and so like, but like they're not gonna tell them that. Even when I was studying animation, I thought I'd be like drawing the cartoons, and then I realized afterwards like that was all being outsourced. Even still back in the pencil and paper days, like, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, oh, they do the character designs here, and they do the boards here, and then we'll do revisions. But yeah, all the drawing's done somewhere else. And then I was even just like, but that's the job I wanted. Like, that's not even,
Yeah.
let alone like the disappointment, right? But it's like, like what it is versus like what people think it is or how they sell it are two vastly different things. And I think sometimes even still people will be in the industry, be like, oh, this is the way it is. And it's like, no, like we're making, like when all the I forget the specifics, but like recently when like we're finding out that like streamers are killing shows off the platform, or things are like shows that are in the can are never going to come out, and then people get so outraged, and it's like, well, it's still just like a commodity, and it's like it's a product that they paid for and they can do whatever they want, and it's like sad, but that's like the corporate side of Hollywood, and like the heartache that like we as the artists feel, and we're like,
Yeah.
no. But like like if you were making rubber at like a rubber factory, and then they ended up like dumping half the rubber because they couldn't find someone to buy it, like it's the same thing, but people think it's different because it's like, I'm such a fan of Star Wars, how could they do that, or how could they, right? And so like that is what leads to the torment, because it's not right sizing what we actually do, and then like not having I'm guilty of it too, but like not having the day-to-day mindfulness of it. When I go to, like, when I went, like my second time I lived in LA, I came out there for a 9-week contract, which turned into 9 days because the studio realized that they didn't know what they were doing. They bit off more than they could chew. They weren't going to be able to deliver like these Marvel quality standards. It was a new studio. And they're like, all right, well, you're all done. And it didn't matter that I had a paper that said 9 weeks on it. So like now I'm without a job. And to like not have that awareness every day, like in this industry, is what's going to get people into trouble, because even if everything comes back to normal and there's like a surge of shows, that will eventually, they'll hit their quota, and then those shows will get cut, and then people, so you can't. It's just a lot, and it's a lot to put so much time and heart and education and money into it, and also like kind of accept like, but nobody has to hire me, and if they do, they might let me go in 3 days. Like it's hard to live in both those worlds simultaneously, I think, like as humans.
Yeah.
So they're just like, I'm going to do this forever, and you kind of have
Yeah.
to have that to get through the day. But then remember, like, but it also might end tomorrow. It's a lot.
Yeah. I've said, uh, like, I think the perfect analogy, I don't know about the perfect analogy, but one that I kind of resonate with is when you think of kids 6, 7, 8 years old who have dreams of being a pilot, of dreams of flying, right? Um, they're not saying, I want to work for Delta when I get older, like I want to work for American Airlines, right? Like they're saying, I want to fly, I want to be a pilot. But our industry is kind of weird in that it's like the same passion, the same kind of things, but it is still very much tied to these companies. It's like, oh, I want to work for Disney. I want to work for Disney and make these things. And so by the time you get to college to go on that path, it seems like a very kind of finite destination that you can make, and then be like, yep, like I'm there, I did it, and now I'm good, kind of thing. um and I've felt, I mean, when I was in school, I felt this. Didn't necessarily know how to verbalize it, but I think over time I've come to be able to verbalize the the kind of displeasure, I guess is the word, that I have with the recruiting process in our industry, and that it seems it's very, very like one-sided, in that from the get-go the relationship between the artist and the studio is like you need us, right? Like the studio is like, you're coming to us, here's what we require to look from you to judge if if we want you, and then congratulations, you can come work for us, kind of thing. And like that's the relationship from the get-go, and it's just, it creates this weird kind of dynamic, where it's like from school we're taught like, oh, I got to get my demo reel to look good. Like, what can I do to get my demo reel to look right, to get my demo reel to stand out, right? And it becomes this weird like competition almost, that has you framing your like energy in like the wrong directions. And I think that combination of those things doesn't help, like to set you up like early to really have that wherewithal that you were talking about. It's like the tricky thing about this industry is it takes you it takes you several years to get to that point, like you said, to where you can really start to see it. And um you know if we can kind of get people to understand, not necessarily in like a gloom and doom way, but just in a very, just like, value your energy, your time, your goals, right, differently than framing them towards, I want to work here, I want to do this. um it's just a different kind of mindset, I think.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, I was just gonna. Sorry, go ahead, Taylor.
I mean, like, lots to ramble on, but yeah, one thing, I mean, when you reminds me of even like schools, like elementary schools, when like when the focus becomes like the standardized test that like the school like has to get like a certain thing right, so then they're not even teaching like a curriculum that brings value to your life. It's like we have to score in the top 10% so we can get funding from the state. So blah 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 blah, right? So like one's like when there is like a certain carrot that everyone has to like go to for the goal, it skews. There's a huge trickle down effect. For sure. So I think it's like a lot of like big ecosystems. Not just the entertainment industry, but yeah, it can warp the way we do things.
Yeah. And yeah, I was gonna say we're coming up on time, but um, yeah, I appreciate you, Taylor, just showing us and talking to us through your experiences and talking about how fluid you've always been, like through everything, about not saying like, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, and this is all I'm ever going to do." I appreciate that you've been flexible about things, especially because I think as artists, we get very emotionally tied to the things that we do. It's like because I remember when I started off as a graphic designer and then switched to industrial design, thinking that that's what I was going to do. It took me a while, and I suffered for not switching. So I appreciate that you are someone who kind of ebbs and flows. If you like something, then you like it. If it changes, you change. So yeah, any closing thoughts from both of y'all?
Yeah, well, I guess first, I still got like I can go for another 20 minutes if you guys are cool. Unless you got to bounce,
Yeah, I mean
but
we have I was gonna say we've been doing this thing on the last few episodes where we had a debatable topic to kind of
sure,
like balance out the deep conversation with some a different, flexing a different conversational muscle. um and I have a good one this week that I want to get you
Uh,
guys' thoughts on. If you want to
cool,
kind of round things out with a debatable question.
cool.
um
Let me
but
wrap it up.
before I do but before we dive into that though, Taylor, you know, want to get your like thoughts. So if there's anything else you were like thinking about what we were just talking about, um, yeah, like
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Um, I try to be very, like I was saying, like, how do I see myself in the community and with peers and stuff. And I try to be vocally uh, optimistic and encouraging because um, all you can control is yourself, right? And so I do follow like my own passions and I pursue them fully because they bring me joy. And then that ends up becoming contagious and eventually it leads to something. And I know a lot of people are struggling right now. And so, just to drop it on top, in case anyone's listening at this point, we can trim it down. But in addition to the 15 years when I was working in the industry and doing music and running festivals and doing all the shit, I spent for 2.5 of those years, I was also dealing with cancer. And uh, that I include it in the time count because I picked up some random work, um, but it took me out of commission. I was like fully messed up from that, mentally and physically, and um, basically had to do a life reset after that. And then you know COVID hit hard and had to do a life reset after that, and the strikes. Hit hard, not as hard as others, but still hit hard, and I've had to do a big pivot after that. And so a lot of the stuff I'm spouting, it's not like from a mountaintop. It's like it's because I've lived through it, and I know that the only way forward is to keep going, and like not like in an enduring way, but like what else am I gonna do, right? Like I can't give up, like especially after all that stuff. Like am I gonna throw in the towel now? So like it's like um, I just know sometimes like especially if you're in the dumps and there's like heavy clouds over you and you hear someone being like, just do your passions and follow your shit. And if you like music, make music. And it can easily be like, well, screw that guy. But like, just in case one person hears this, like, it's like, I've been through it all and still done it. And I think doing that and getting through it then puts everything else in perspective because it's like, well, okay, like, I made it through that. Like, who cares, right? Like, everything else gets even like more right size, which I feel like gives me more perspective, which then helps me do the stuff I love even more. And then, it like spins itself like out, which is awesome. Um, so yeah, like, I just, because I know there's only been like a few negative comments I've gotten on LinkedIn, but I think people can just get upset at like the positivity, but it just comes from a real place and like from experience. So I just want to say that.
No, thank you, Taylor. Yeah, man, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. I think, dude, you're amazing. I think
Yeah.
people when people hear positivity and react like negatively, like you said, negative comments on LinkedIn and stuff like that, those are the people that need it the most,
Yeah,
right? And I think one way that I always like to look at it, and that I think helps um, land a little bit easier on someone who may be really kind of down in the dumps about things, is like there's always a better feeling emotion. You don't have to make this huge jump. Like, it's impossible to make this huge jump from sorrow to joy, right? But what feels better than anger, right? Disappointment, right? Disappointment feels a little bit better than anger. You can go for that, right? And then it's like, what feels a little bit better than disappointment? Like, oh, displeasure, right? And then it's like you can kind of make yourself take yourself up this scale of emotions. And um no one's asking for this huge jump, like you said. It doesn't happen that way. It's a very small kind of place, but you have to be looking for it, right? You have to be looking
for
for
sure.
that better feeling emotion wherever it is that you are on that scale. So um yeah, dude, I
Yeah.
100%, man.
Incredible. No, I love this episode. This was, I think somebody's life is going to be changed after this, because this was, I appreciate you sharing your journey. And just wondering, do you have any, for besides LinkedIn, is LinkedIn the primary place that you have, we could plug in to get people to,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I fell off using Facebook, and I usually make Twitter and Instagram for like specific things because I hate when like my algorithm gets crazy. So like I have like a Pokemon card Instagram, and I have like a finger skateboarding Instagram, and then I have like well, I was like doing
hey, the
NFT
lead.
projects for a while. Yeah, so it's like, and now when I go in there, I just go on my feed, and it's like, oh, more stuff like I'm into.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as like public connecting, just LinkedIn or just email directly. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put that in. And yeah, Jamil, you wanna lead us with a
my,
debate?
my
Debate.
debatable topic.
You've been sitting on it too. I
this
know
one
you've probably
this
been
one's
looking at
simple. I think that this one's going to be actually a pretty good one.
it. Okay.
I don't know, Taylor, if you've heard like the last few ones that we've been doing, just like a little
Uh,
fun thing.
yeah,
But
yeah.
this one's simple. I just want to know who would win in a fight, Kool-Aid Man or the Michelin Man?
Mm,
Oh. So do we pick?
'Cause I just want to know. I just want to
Since
know.
Taylor, you pick first, and then I guess I'll pick the opposing one.
I think well, it's tricky because so Kool Aid Man depends what law of physics we're with because Kool Aid Man's fragile, man. He's got that glass and he's full of liquid, so it could just take one wrong bump and that whole thing busts open. But on the flip
I don't
side,
know.
if the glass is strong, uh, you could dump some Kool Aid out, and the Michelin Man's going to slip all over the place. You know what I mean? So he might not even be able to get to him. But he's also made out of rubber, so he could take all the bumps. So I think I'd have to pick probably Michelin Man. I think so.
Okay.
If he can
I'm
get
gonna.
to Kool Aid Man.
I yeah, I think the Kool-Aid Man would win.
I'm also gonna oppose with the Kool Aid Man
Oh, I
because
genuinely, I genuinely think the Kool-Aid Man would win.
really, okay. My
Yeah,
thoughts are
I
that
don't think that's glass. That's got to be like plexiglass or
yeah, it's
something
something else. It's
where
it's
he
like
he busts
fully
through walls all the time. Like,
That's true.
yeah.
That's true. It's true.
Maybe it's not even Kool Aid that's in him. It's like blood or something, and it's not actually moving. He's just like
Right.
thick.
Plus, he's
That's
like,
great.
I feel like he's got a little bit of a crazy streak too. Like the Kool-Aid Man to like bust through walls, and he's like, not only is he doing, he's talking shit too. He's like, "Oh yeah," like
Yeah,
I feel like he's, I feel like I don't want to fight. And to be fair, I guess like you gotta kind of like, is it like a structured fight? Is it a boxing
right.
match? Is
Mhm.
it a or is it just like a street fight? You know, like
Yeah,
I think Kool Aid Man would be the first to start a fight. Like he would probably jump at the Michelin Man for no reason. I don't know. I feel like the Michelin Man doesn't seem like a fighter.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I think the only, I guess maybe the only way the Michelin Man wins is um, just like in a war of attrition. Because like if he just keeps getting the bumps and getting up, the Kool Aid Man
yeah.
might get bored of it and be like, forget this, you know. Because I don't think he's going to do any real damage to him. He's going to keep bouncing around. So unless it's like a sumo ring, you know, and he knocks him out. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna hold tight by my Michelin guy, but you guys can take the Kool Aid.
I
Oh,
had side note, I actually hit a tire last weekend.
out
Like
of
I was on the
frustration?
highway.
Oh, okay.
No, I was on the highway and somebody was in the fast lane on the left. I was in the middle, and they, I guess they didn't see it. They just plowed right through this like broken truck tire, and it flew up, into the air, hits my car. But on the highway, it was the safest thing for me to do. But it was just to go right through it. I didn't have space to like maneuver or anything like that. But I thought it just like bounced right off. It wasn't until like an hour and a half later I pulled into the gas station, and I pulled in and I just noticed like everybody was just like looking at me as I'm driving, and I was like, "What?" My wife was in the passenger seat. And we both noticed like they were all just like looking at our car as we drive through, and I get out and it's just this giant jagged piece of tire just
Oh
sticking
wow!
out the front grill of my
Oh,
car. And I was like,
huh.
it was filled with like metal, and like I don't know how truck tires
Wow!
are made, but I was like,
Shoot.
no wonder. Yeah, but
Okay.
tires, all that to say, tires, to your point, Taylor, they
Resilient.
can
Yeah,
they can do
yeah.
some damage.
Take a beating, man.
Bet. Okay, cool. And I guess that's the pod.
Yeah, that's the
Oh,
pod. Taylor, dude, especially the last thing you mentioned, man. I'm with you wholeheartedly. Like on the positivity, I've seen it through LinkedIn. That's certainly what gravitated me towards you on LinkedIn. That's how Taylor and I connected. Um, and it's like you said, I think the perfect word was like it's contagious. Like, and I think it's hard to think that because um positivity isn't as loud as negativity, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that negativity is like the majority, right? It's just kind of louder. But um, if you're on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is kind of a shifting platform. Taylor, you probably would agree, like over then to where it was a
hmm
few years ago. You can definitely go on places if you're in a tough place, you can find that positivity um out there to really kind of give you a little pick me up. So yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate you mentioning that, Taylor.
Yeah, I think you know a lot of like even LinkedIn in general get a lot of slack for like you know I know like one of the new hot words is like toxic positivity, especially on there. But like the thing, it's like even people citing that like you know there's people that are on any social media just to get engagement, right? So those people already kind of just like write them off, right? Because like whatever they're bringing to the table, it's like what's their motive, right? Going back to the studios, right? Full circle, like they're in it to get engagement, right? So even if they might even say stuff they agree with, but like just being positive, especially if it's coming from personal experience or like a vulnerability or sharing a story, like like that's good value, And I think sometimes there's a lot of people kind of like snake oil salesman. I'd be like, hey, everything's gonna be okay. We're gonna make it. You'll be rich. Here's how to invest your $500,000, right? And then people see all that shit all day, and then someone's like, hey, I know what you're feeling. Here's what I did, and like they'll lump all that in with the same thing, when in reality it's like, you know, people may all look the same on there, but there's different messages from different sources, and just and sometimes it's also not, people aren't ready to hear it sometimes,
Yeah.
when I was going through all my health stuff, like there were people telling me stuff, who didn't know what they were talking about, and there was also maybe some stuff being shared with me that maybe I wasn't ready to hear, and just like being like, okay, like maybe today I won't hear it, but like tomorrow, like I might, like not judging where you are in the process, but also not judging where other people are in the process, and maybe thinking maybe there is something to this, but like I might not see it today, and even our own art's like that, right? Like you'll do a drawing or a model or a design, and you'll be like, oh, this sucks, and you'll come back to it tomorrow and be like, oh, actually that's not so bad. I thought that was garbage, right? So like everything we're experiencing is always influenced by the mood we're in too, right? So I could riff about this stuff all day long, but yeah, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
just gotta,
I felt, yeah, dude, 100%, man. I think as long as it's cool with you, I think that there definitely will be a next time,
cool.
on our
Yeah,
podcast. As long as you want to come back, we
for
can
sure.
dive on this, dive into this stuff like you said all day. Um and I absolutely think people need to hear it.
Yeah, I think
Appreciate
maybe in the meantime, Jeff, you and me should meet up and grab a coffee or something, or
That's right.
Yeah.
Mill, you gotta come visit us, because we got the majority here in Atlanta, so come visit us.
It's not a bad drive. I did that drive last summer. It wasn't bad. It's like 8 hours.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
It's starting to get nice out too. It's
Yeah.
like people are walking around, and I don't know. I'm down,
Yeah.
Taylor. Let's. I think we're already connected on LinkedIn, so
Yeah,
we'll set something out for sure.
let's do it, man. Thanks again, guys. Thanks for having me.